I'm John Micali. I'm the president of Allied Building Inspection Services. Allied has been serving the real estate, legal, and lending community for 34 years, founded in 1993, born of a storm out of Hurricane Andrew. Wow, well, Hurricane Andrew hit at 5 o'clock in the morning on August 24th. It was a Monday. 2 days before, Saturday, was when I heard about it. I was at a party out at Stiltsville. It was a beautiful day. There was not a cloud in the sky, and somebody said, you know, there's this hurricane who's going to hit us. I said, oh my gosh, yeah, I think I heard about that. And we left that party, went back, and it was everywhere at that point. Panic was ensuing, and started preparing. I was a project manager working for Chase Construction here in Miami, and I had to go and secure the job site. I had just bought my first property. It was a low-rise condominium in South Miami off of 80th Street and 57th Avenue. And so I really wasn't a lot I could do, and the hurricane wasn't supposed to hit right there. At that point, initially they were talking about Broward County. But I went and I put some tape on the windows. People teach you to tape the windows, and that was on Sunday. And I never forget that night, I went to bed. It was probably like midnight, and a couple hours later I got woken up by the wind. The power went out, and I had a little radio, battery radio, and I could listen to it. And I was sitting against a wall, and there was a window on this wall, the wall corner here and window. And through this window, orange light, red light, green light, the most bizarre electrical energy in this storm. It was kind of like that movie War of the Worlds with the lightning, you know, all this. And I don't know whether it was transformers exploding or it was just this tremendous energy, and the wind was like, so many people say you hear this like, you know, like a train, and the lightning. And then I heard this sound, a little. The wall outlets were whistling because the wind was going up into the soffits and their interspatial wall spaces around my old building. And mind you, I was probably in a 100-mile-an-hour wind. I was not in the eye of it. And I'm leaning against the wall, and every now and then I felt the building shake as something would hit the building. And I started to get terrified, remembering, wow, this thing can go down. And I could see the windows bowing. But gradually the wind reduced, and the storm died down, and several hours later, I remember going and opening up the back door into the courtyard of this place, and it was absolutely unrecognizable. Every tree was down, and we had some huge trees, and just draped power lines, and I could see what was the bakery center, now is the Shops of Sunset. You couldn't see that before, so it was unrecognizable, complete destruction of trees and power lines, and I thought, oh my God, it's over. We're ruined. We're finished. Of course, I was 100% wrong. That was just the beginning. What happened after that was amazing. Wow, well, so, you know, of course, the next day it was just trying to recover. We didn't have power for about 2 weeks there at that location, and there were people who didn't have power for months. And then the word getting out about how bad the devastation was. Country Walk down to Homestead, how many people lost their lives, 250,000 structures completely destroyed. And so I went back to my project to try to build it, and wasn't long that my phone started ringing. Having a general contractor's license, I had people calling me. It took a couple of months, but I had quit my job and started a construction company with another person who gave me kind of some push to do it. And I was rebuilding homes by about December, and that was August when it hit. So, and I ended up rebuilding about 25 homes in Hurricane Andrew, and it was actually in Country Walk where I rebuilt 2 homes. Somebody came over to me, a woman from across the street, and mind you, there's no power, it's completely desolate, the buildings are destroyed, there's no street signs, people just wrote on the side of the building, Joe Smith, State Farm, and a policy number, and they wrote their address, and that's how the adjusters drove around. somebody came over and said, hey, can you do an inspection for me so I could submit it to of the damage? So I said, sure. So I took out my camera, I took the pictures, I did measurements, I went to Eckerd Drugs, and I gave, I don't know if it was Eckerd's, I think it might have still been Walgreens, but Eckerd's gave them they went back a few days later, picked up the film that was now developed, and this picture's bad, that picture's bad, kept the good ones, stuck them on the paper, slid it into the sleeves, put it in the binder, and then I was at my Packard Bell computer, which was about that deep, typing in all the quantities and measurements, and I gave them a report. I'll never forget that day. I was back out there, and the woman came over, and I handed her the report, and she handed me a check. And I thought, wow, that felt really good. I just gave somebody some information that really helped them, as opposed to being a contractor where you're building and things like that, which is fine. But it was a rewarding feeling to be able to be a consultant and give these people the help they needed.
I'm gonna ask the sister.
Okay. Yeah, wow. So predicting and preparing for hurricanes, I mean, at the time we were under what was called the South Florida Building Code. That very famous picture of Hurricane Andrew hitting the coast was on the cover of the code. And I want to say our wind speeds were about 120 at the time. So a lot of science came out, and a lot of science actually and discovery came out of, again, the development of Country Walk, where the gable ends had collapsed and failed. But so through all this investigation, it was determined that, staples do not hold a shingle on in a windstorm. There's not enough bearing area, and so staples were not allowed anymore. And they've oriented strand board, particle board sheathing, when it gets wet, the pull-out resistance is diminished, and that is not allowed anymore. And so those were knocked out within months. We realized that this was a big failure. We also realized that our inspection process and the bracing of our gate trusses was inadequate. And you saw that again in Country Walk, where so many gable ends just toppled because the bracing was inadequate. And so a lot of the wind mitigation process and the wind mitigation inspection came directly out of it to be able to rate these buildings. And so now the Florida Building Code, particularly the NOA, Notice of Acceptance, and the whole wind design, all came through Miami-Dade County, and it's the world's leading wind code. I mean, you go all over the world, you go to the Bahamas, they use our NOA system for approval of envelope components, and the Florida Building Code, and really, I mean, credit the building department, Miami-Dade County, Charlie Danger at the time, who's no longer a building official. These guys pioneered it and pushed it to what we have today. Now we're at this 185 mile an hour. And so we are the leading authorities in wind design and hurricane hardening and mitigation. And so that's what came out of this. Remember, Hurricane Andrew to this day is still the costliest natural disaster if you take inflation into account. It was like $25 billion at the time, and so it was just a tremendous storm winds up to 200 miles an hour, and we saw crazy things, crazy damages, I remember driving out by Tamiami Airport, and there was a gas station, and over the gas pumps, the canopy was completely stripped of all the metal, framing, metal panels on it. But not only that, the two I-beams that were columns that were holding it were twisted. I could not comprehend the type of wind strength it would take to twist an I-beam. And there are many stories like that. Yeah, so, we have a saying here, you don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect, right? So, we live in a very harsh environment. There's 80+% humidity most of the year, extremes in temperatures, chloride, salt in the air. So our buildings deteriorate, they take a beating. And getting your home inspected or your building inspected yearly, or at least every couple of years, is going to go a long way towards being able to prepare it for a windstorm. It's just the old saying that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Particularly if you have certainly for any type of roof, but let's just say a tile roof, tiles become debonded just from the whole everyday heating, night cooling, heating, cooling, expansion, movement. That will happen. And then so they're subject now to being moved in a windstorm at maybe wind speeds they weren't designed for. Age is a factor in this. So you should get your building inspected, your home inspected. All the way around, obviously, for all the different systems. Give you an opportunity to mitigate issues before they become more costly or do more damage. But particularly with the roof, you should have your roof inspected. You're going to find issues with trees close to your roof that'll do damage. You're going to find weak and susceptible areas, flashings, things like that can be repaired, maintained, and brought up.